Hello, and welcome to the Social Connect. I'm J.F. Whitaker, your host, and the author of The Day Before I Died. The Day Before I Died is a memoir, and a significant focus of that memoir is suicide. And today I'd like to talk about why I did not choose suicide as a solution to my problems. And I hope by sharing my experience, I can influence others to choose alternative solutions to their troubling times. We do have a special guest today, Topher Jerome from Jaspr Health in Seattle, and we'll get back to Topher in a moment. We have decided to do Social Connect once a month, and we want your participation as much as possible. It is extremely valuable. Our next session will be August the 8th. Thank you for those who have purchased the book, and thank you for those who have seen fit to do a review on Amazon. It does make a difference, and all of your participation makes a difference. So thank you very, very much. When I talk about my story, my memoir, I talk about it as a journey of an innocent Irish Catholic boy from the coast of New England through the apple orchards, Pennsylvania, and on to the brink of suicide. Most important part of that statement right now is innocent and naive. I was innocent and naive. If I ever heard the word gay or homosexual in my growing up years, I do not remember. It did not exist. I don't say that's right. It just did not exist. And I don't know what's worse, to be berated and taunted because of your sexual orientation or completely ignored. And I'm not sure it makes a difference. Both approaches cause scars. I think if anybody were to do an investigation into what we thought of a gay or homosexuality in the 60s and 70s, it would have been somewhere on a scale between an aberration, an anomaly, or an atrocity. And I'll tell you what, I did not want to be on that scale anywhere. So we went silent. We denied it. It didn't exist, ever exist. And eventually, I became the atrocity in my own mind. And when I came home from Vietnam, I wanted to be your hero. I wanted to be your hero returning home. But again, I became an atrocity by those who did not welcome us back, by those who called us baby killers and blamed us for the failed war effort. And so I again became the atrocity in my mind. I think it's important. In my mind, that's what happened. And I want to read from The Day Before I Died, a little bit about exactly how I felt so you understand. Many moments and seconds of my life had been painful. Moments of hurt seemed as if they would go on forever. Seconds of scorn cut to the marrow of my existence. I thought no accumulation of time would make you love me. No deeds were great or good enough for me to earn your respect. There were no more ribbons or rewards for going on. Thinking of no tomorrow didn't generate anxiety and sadness. Wondering what would come next did. What form of hurt lurked around the next corner? Wrestling with whether I could endure the next barrage of hate and contempt, exhausted. Constantly worrying, would I be okay? Was a very heavy burden. Suicide had not been a threat to me. It was a viable option. It was a simple step to freedom from those oppressing moments and seconds. It was a solution. It was the appropriate exit for the coward, the baby killer, and the vet no one saw or heard. It was the answer to the echoing mantra, and you never will be. But I didn't do it. I didn't do it. If I did, I would have killed the wrong person. I would not have killed the person Dad wanted me to be because that person never existed. I would not have offed the little fat kid mocked and humiliated because I wasn't fat. I would not have ended the life of the little gay boy no one could accept. I would not have killed the coward, the failure, and the unwanted lost child. I would have killed the wrong person. I would have killed the brave little boy who put on his coat and went for help. I would have ended the life of the loving father, husband, brother, and friend. I would have taken out the Vietnam vet who fought for freedom, the young man who made good decisions, and the somewhat handsome guy who was funny and often loved by friends, coworkers. I would have killed the wrong person. It was not the mocking phrases of my path. I was not lost or forgotten. My history was not a predictor of my future. My history is a foundation to build on and to recognize the strength and courage it took to make that history and survive it. Joseph Campbell said, we all have meaning, and we bring that meaning to life. And there is no blueprint to life, but there is meaning. And the real tragedy would be to take a life, your life, my life, and eliminate what was meant to be. We all have meaning. Thank you. And I told you we had a special guest, and I want to turn it over right away to our special guest because we have a very unique opportunity to look into the future here with Topher Jerome from Jaspr Health in Seattle. And Topher brings the unique set of skills to his project in Seattle. His IT skills, his mental health experience, and his life experiences all combine to make him the ideal candidate to work with a team at Jaspr Health to build a new suicide app. This app will be, we're going to get a chance to see this app in its developmental stages, and this app will be used for the assessment, intervention, and prevention of suicides, and will primarily, in its initial stages, be used in emergency rooms. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Topher, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say. Welcome, Topher.
If I unmute, it's easier to hear me, isn't it? So I always wonder what I'm going to say during these things. Thank you for the intro, and yikes, my picture came up. I can't quite deal with that. And yeah, for your intro, for what you said and the work that you're doing. It's a really, really important cause. You know, my life has been touched by suicide in many ways. I am a suicide attempt survivor. I had a major attempt in 1999 where I almost died and was in the hospital for ages. And then I've had some subsequent, much smaller, quiet, people didn't know attempts. But, you know, I couldn't stand my life. I was caught in addiction. I was childhood trauma that I'd never addressed, and how that played out in my life, just desperately seeking escape. And when I can't stand the pain, that's what I would turn to. I'm going to give you a little demo. I'm actually going to play a video. I'm in the app, bits of my story, and so I'm actually going to play one of those, which I don't usually do when I'm giving demos, but I think it's part of what we're doing here is using the power of story, lived experience to touch other people. You know, there's something incredibly powerful. I've done a lot of the bedside research. You know, we're doing our clinical trials and all throughout the development process of the app in different hospitals, Mayo Clinic, you know, various other Midwestern hospitals, as well as one here in Seattle, where I watch people respond to, in particularly video stories of people I've lived experience, and say things like, this is the best experience I've ever had in an emergency department, or I feel like somebody's here in the room with me. This is life-changing, right? And there are these short 2 to 4 minute video clips of story, right? It's like, so I've been blessed in my life, one, to have survived suicide, in so many reasons. You know, I've got this incredible family, which ultimately was what saved my life from doing it again. That I was able to use my lived experience professionally now for, I worked in mental health, developing peer support programs in a county hospital here in Seattle, developing and managing them, all based on how lived experience with mental health issues can help somebody else. You know, I belong to 12-step programs where our lived experience is how you help somebody else. What I'm doing now, it was, I'm sorry, just briefly wrap up and get to the demo, but I was working at Harborview, and one of the co-owners of the company I work for now approached me and said it was a very, very early sort of pilot grant they had to develop this thing, and she wanted a focus group of people with lived experience. And I was on the phone and managing all these people, and I said, I don't have time for this. I literally said that. And then she dropped a name, somebody I knew, and it was like, okay, well, maybe I'll listen to her. So we did this focus group, got great input, and that started this idea in their mind that, oh, we really need to include people with lived experience in a more meaningful way. They had the idea that they would do a little bit, but so that wound up, several years later, and they got this grant to develop what we've developed, and reached out to me and asked if I'd be their project manager. And so I took that job. I gave up the golden handcuffs of public service and the benefits and all that, just took this dive into this work. And it's incredibly powerful to bring my lived experience with suicide, as you said, with my IT background and then my professional experience with 12 years working in the mental health field together for this thing. So incredibly grateful for this opportunity. And it's also super challenging. Sometimes working in and around suicide day in and day out can be exhausting, but I'm grateful to be able to be of service in this way. So I'm going to share my screen. I'll log into this thing here quick. So as you said, initially, we have developed this for, can you see the screen, the login screen? Okay. So this was, as you said, initially developed for people who are in the emergency department who are waiting while they're suicidal. There's incredible amount of waiting, and there's incredible amount of trauma being a mental health patient in a hospital. You're locked into a room, or you're handcuffed, you're in restraints in the hallway. You wait for hours and hours not knowing what's going to happen. And when you do get to talk to people, it's strictly triage. Where are we going to put them? There's no direct, very rarely direct interventions, skill building, or counseling, right? It's just assess and go. So we've developed this thing. The idea is, I'm just going to log into an existing patient. So imagine you've been put into a room in the emergency department. You've been checked in by the nurse. You've been cleared to have this tablet. And so this tablet contains, so this is what we've got. This is a web version of the tablet app. So it's broken into sort of 4 primary categories. Shared stories, which has been my baby. I've done all the video interviews, all the editing, and really that's my pride and joy here. Comfort and skills, which is super important. We teach skills to help regulate emotions in the moment, and also things that they can use after they go home, as well as things to distract. The suicide status interview, which is a comprehensive, led by virtual artificial intelligence avatar, that collects data first person from the patient, and then it produces a decision support tool for providers so that they can help to inform them and give them material to work with about the person, so that they can be prepared when they go in the room. And it's not meant to replace care, it's meant to supplement. And then the takeaway kit. They build one of the pieces is they do a comprehensive crisis plan for when they get home. They do a lethal means counseling. And the takeaway kit is where you set it up, so then you get access to it after you go home via smartphone. And so I'll show you some screenshots of that. So quickly, I'm just going to jump into a couple of these things. The shared story section, which is broken down into topics. So my story is super powerful. My wish for you is super powerful. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Surviving the emergency room, coping with shame, my ER experience, going home. Ultimately, what do I do to stay well? If you select a topic and you listen to a person, then you go, oh, I really like this person. Then you can go down and see all the different topics that that person has shared on. There's over 50 videos now. We have another 30 that are going in as part of a crisis module that we've just built. So I'll just I'm going to play one clip here from my story. And it's really, I think, pertinent to how people relate to suicide. And it's not that the suicidal ideation goes away. So anyway, I'm just going to play it for you. How has my relationship to suicide changed based on my life now? You know, that's such an interesting thing to reflect on. When I was young, suicide was this option. It was always this thing I had stashed away that nobody knew about, that I could do if things got bad enough. And then eventually I tried to attempt suicide, and in some ways, because of my relationship with people who are close to me, I sort of removed that as an option because I couldn't hurt the people I loved, even though I was in so much pain sometimes. So there I was stuck between pain and wanting to die, wishing I could die, and the promise I'd made to people that I wasn't going to do it. So that forced me into recovery. It's like I just have to do something so I'm not in this position, because I would have wound up suicidal again. And so to look at that as what my life was kind of like now, or what my life was like, and then what it's like now, is so different, right? In all honesty, I think about suicide more often than most people know. And it's not that I'm really suicidal, but it's when I get uncomfortable, and mostly when I get in fear. It's like, oh my God, I can't handle this. Oh, I wish I were dead, right? And so it's not that I wish I were dead. It's an old pattern. It's just like, it's where my mind goes all by itself. And it's like, so I hear myself think that, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's not really what's going on. You're in fear. Oh, you're okay, take care of self. Do something for self, right? And so, suicide's always kind of around, especially since I work around suicide, but it's so different because I don't want to die. And I know, and I don't blame myself for having those thoughts, because it's like, of course I have those thoughts. That's what I thought for years and years and years. They're old patterns. So my life now, it's about wanting life, even though I have those thoughts. Even though, I can stub my toe and wish I were dead, right? It's just like, it doesn't take a whole lot. But I stop myself. No, I don't wish I were dead. This is just a bad day, right? Let's get some perspective. And there's so many things I can do to help me get and maintain perspective. So that's a sample. It's so many people have contributed, and I'm collecting more people. I have more people to add that I've interviewed who I haven't edited yet. So anyway, it's an ongoing building project. The comfort and skills section offers things like exercises like paced breathing, where it's just like a simple breathing exercise. You breathe in and breathe out with the app. which can reduce distress in the moment. Things, these first things are like distracting things. People go to puppies more often than not. And it's so incredibly amazing to be with somebody who's in the suicidal crisis in the emergency department, and they click on puppies and they start to laugh. And as soon as they laugh, you know, their whole chemistry is changing. And then we get down into skill building. There's examples from people who have lived experience talking about skills that they use to stay well or to get through moments. And then we go down and we have skills taught by professionals. Marsha Lenahan's, there's a lot of content from her. She's the creator of DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a very good therapy for people who are suicidal, and so on. So there's a lot of different content there. The suicide status interview, which in this sample patient, it's already been completed. This is the chat with the virtual guide. But really what comes down to is I'm going to just jump into the summary here. So there's a planning report for the provider, which indicates different elements that rank high. The algorithm demonstrates polls from the interview, which is extensive, items that can stand out to help the provider. It periodically pings people throughout the ED experience, their level of distress and agitation. This is shown on a graph. In our preliminary results from the randomized control trial, it has a significant, compared to people as care as usual, the app demonstrates a significant reduction in distress and agitation, as well as other things, which I don't have the data in front of me. The care planning report, they've created a stability plan, which again, I'm not going to go to right now, but there is their stability plan listing out their sort of immediate steps to take if there's a crisis, supported people in their life they've entered, their reasons for living, which is important because it reminds them of the reasons why you want. It's pretty self-obvious. I guess I don't need to explain it. Recognizing warning signs. You know, one of my early warning signs is telling people I'm okay when I'm not actually okay, right? I know that. And when I hear myself doing it, it's like, oh, you better watch this. So that's the idea behind warning signs, coping strategies, all things that they've selected that they can do in the moment. You can favorite things. So their favorited comfort and skill activities from the page I showed you, favorited shared stories. And this all comes because there's an at-home app, and all of this stuff is brought to the top. They have access to all the content, but the stuff they favorited shows first. So quickly here, so this is now in clinical trials. We've had our first couple of sales, which we're super excited about. We have a supplement grant that we've applied for to adapt it for substance use, and specifically around opioids in the emergency department and suicidality. We're working on another grant to introduce a lot of this content into an app aimed for youth. And there's just a lot of traction. We have partnered with major healthcare organizations around the country, Johns Hopkins, Baylor Scott and White, Geisinger, Mayo Clinic has been a huge partner. So there's a lot of both professional, you know, as well as the lived experience. So what we talk about is the best of science and evidence-based practice, along with shared stories and wisdom of people who have their own lived experience with suicide. So so we had this smartphone app, and we got a supplement, and I have to share that my dear 26-year-old niece died by suicide last October, and incredibly tragic. And I was talking with our one of Linda DeMeff, who's one of our principals, owners of the company. And I was just saying, God, I wish all this work we're doing, I wish there's some way to reach somebody like my niece. And, and this isn't developed for outside of the emergency department. My niece hadn't been in the emergency department, but what came of it is we're not doing something for immediate distress. And so on the smartphone app, we've created this much more robust app. And I'm not going to go into it. I don't have a working demo right now, but it's called the Distress Survival Guide, and it walks people through their sort of step-by-step, I don't really have screenshots of it, but of things that they can do in the moment to help through the crisis. And then little video clips of people talking about why each of those skills is super important. So we're super excited to get this into the hands of, we're going to be starting a trial with it next week, actually. So that is our project. It's been a whirlwind. It's taken us about 2 years to get where we're at now, and I'm super, super proud of it. And I think back to when I was in the emergency department more than once with suicidal ideation, and think, when I sat in those rooms for hours, not knowing what was going to happen or who was going to come in next, what a difference this would have made. So I think that's all I've got. So.
Thank you, Topher. Thank you. James, do we have any questions?
Sure. So everyone, if you do have questions, please put them in the chat. I'll be the moderator for today. And we have a question for Topher. Joe talks about, he's a Vietnam veteran, and when he came back from the Vietnam War, that's really where he had struggled a lot with suicide ideation. Do you think you'll have anything included in your app that will support veterans, or maybe stories about people coming back from war?
Yeah. Absolutely. This is the first version, and we're going to be, as I said, I'm going to be expanding the video collection. And it's not because it was a choice, it's just been, I've had a hard time, I've had to find all these people, and so given the time restraints, I just haven't found a veteran who would fit as a video subject yet. So that's definitely in the plans. And one of our chief operating officer, Chris Hall, is also a veteran, and he has a lot of passion about ultimately getting this in the hands of veterans. And we're also having some conversations with the military around maybe possible ways we can adapt it for them.
Right. Yeah, there's a follow-up question from someone else just talking about, are you going to be working with the VA? Sounds like you're in the process of, incorporating that. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, and if people have contacts, we're always looking. I'm also involved, just starting to get involved in the marketing piece. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I have another question for you, Topher. People are curious about when this will go live. I don't know if you can share that with us, but.
Well, it's, our primary market right now is hospitals, hospital emergency departments, in healthcare systems. So we are starting the marketing now. It is live. We were doing paid pilots with these organizations. So it's at a smaller scale launch, just as we work out the bugs and figure out the integration, especially as we figure it out, it's all going to feed into the electronic medical records. So that's a whole complex piece that is dependent on each hospital system. So yeah, we're working on it. It's live now. It's not available to the general public.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Joe. So you shared about a little bit why you didn't do it. What was it like the day after you didn't do it? Could you describe a little bit more on that experience?
It was like, I don't know if it's exactly the day after, because I don't think it happens as an event, it's a process.
Hmm.
It was like freedom. It was like freedom, a recognition that my perception had been 100% wrong, that I was not the person that was described in the taunts and the berating comments of others. I was not the person described by people talking about the vets coming home. That was not who I was. Find out that's not who I was very freeing and very, very, very uplifting for me. It was like taking a rock off. And the awareness that I am who I am, and I am that person I described in the writing, not the one I thought I was. Okay? I am the loving father, husband, lover, brother, whatever. That's who I am. And to be able to know that, feel that, and live that was a very, very, very freeing and uplifting experience. And I continue to live that today, some 45 years later. So I'm very happy.
Great, thank you. And it looks like I have one more question for you, Joe. You've discussed a little bit about your mission to help others. Have you heard from anyone, what are some of your experiences on some of the impacts that you've made by sharing and being so open about your story?
Well, we've had a lot of personal emails that have come in that are not public, but one very particular email was a man I know contacted us for assistance with his brother who was suicidal. And we helped him intervene and get him to appropriate help. We have reached out to veterans organizations and are in discussions with the Vietnam Veterans National Museum and Memorial in Ohio, thanks to my brother David. And we think we're going to be doing some great work with them. Right now it's going to be video, but next year we hope to do in-person presentations related to different topics. The first one they're talking about is PTSD. And that was a very, very important element in my decision to want to commit suicide. And we are also reaching out to the LGBT community here in San Diego. We are on the Pride virtual program that they're having at the San Diego Library. It's called a Literature Cafe. And July 17th, we will be featured. The Day Before I Died will be featured. And particularly in that story, I talk more about the coming out process to my parents, which you'll hear more about on August the 8th. And that was an experience to behold, but we'll talk more about that later. But I think we're making a difference. We've got a lot of input, a lot of comments, and it wasn't just suicide as I thought it was going to be when I wrote the book. There were many other topics that people have related to, like parenting, like understanding one lady wrote and said she understood her brother better who served in Vietnam and is still silent. So we've touched different people on different levels, and I'm sorry we all have to be shelter in place or semi-sheltered in place at this time. We could be doing more, and I look forward to doing more when that is behind us.
Excellent. I don't know if there's any other questions, but I'll open it up. If there's a last burning desire question, happy to answer it. Okay, I don't think I'm getting any more in the chat.
All right.
So I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I want to say thank you for participating. We appreciate your input, and your participation is very, very significant to us. Please go to our website, jfwhitaker.com, and look for links to other events related to The Day Before I Died. Please purchase the book, write a review, and help us make a difference helping others. And remember, you are not alone, and your darkest moments are not the end. They are the beginning of who you will become. Do not give up, ever. You have meaning. Thank you very much for being here today.